So today we're going to talk about backup offers. We have discussed backup offers in some of our other Tuesday talks, just little snippets here and there when it was appropriate. But today we're actually dedicating this entire Tuesday talk to it. So whether you're writing a backup offer for a buyer that you represent, or you have a listing and you accept an offer, and then there is another buyer that wants to put a backup offer in your listing, how you go about maneuvering backup offers from both sides. So
perfect. So which side would you like to start with?
Let's start with the buyer side.
Okay. You want to show the contract?
So
give us the scenario.
Yeah.
Give us the scenario.
So the scenario is multiple offer situation.
Okay.
Very timely. Your buyer
still.
Yeah. Your buyer submits a phenomenal offer on a property, but it doesn't get accepted. However, the listing agent calls you and says, would your buyer like to be in backup position? And your buyer says, yes, we would love to. How do you go about doing that?
You put it in the contract.
Yeah. So my recommendation is there's two ways you can approach this. The offer that you initially wrote probably had your dates and deadlines spelled out as title deadline, November 7th, inspection objection, November 10th. And sometimes the seller will just counter that original offer because they like all of the terms of the offer. They liked all the dates and deadlines. They liked the closing date. They liked everything about it. But in order for the offer to be true backup position, you need backup language. So a counter offer can be created, and you can just put the language into the counter offer. We've got the clause located in Elevate. We also, you can just see on the screen, we also have it in the interactive contract to buy and sell. My recommendation, because your dates and deadlines are no longer going to align correctly, is to draft a whole new offer. So go into CTM, duplicate your contract so you don't have to hand type everything in again, but change your dates and deadlines to MEC. So instead of November 7th, November 10th, November 15th, November 17th, do 4 days after contract acceptance, 7 days after contract acceptance. And then in your additional provisions, you're going to put in that the MEC dates don't start until the backup offer has been moved to first position. Because you don't want to turn in earnest money. You don't want to start an inspection if you're in backup position, because you may never get moved into first position. So the two key things, regenerate your contract, duplicate it, and change your dates to MEC. Go to the additional provisions, put in there the MEC dates won't start until the offer's been moved to first position, and put in the backup buyer position language, which is on your screen in front of you, number 5.
Yeah, and that's key.
Key.
Please do not forget to say what MEC means, because normally it's already in the contract. MEC means when it's an accepted contract. Well, when you have this backup clause put in, you technically have an accepted contract, but you're not really
moving forward
because you're not in first position. So please, please, please put that in your addition. MEC to me, I go into first position.
Yeah. Exactly. So then what happens is, let's just show real quick how to access the clauses. Okay. So the clauses can be found when you go in to generate your contract. You go down to additional provisions. On the right-hand side, there's an orange clause button. If you click on that, it brings up all 98 clauses. They're alphabetical. So go to the B section, and it's buyer backup conditions. There's 3 different clauses when you click that button. So click the box, hit insert, and it automatically auto-populates it into the bottom of your contract. So there's 3 different backup position clauses. I recommend the 3rd one. The reason for the 3rd one is it's the most comprehensive, and it states that the buyer has the right to terminate the contract should they find another property and no longer wish to move forward. As long as they haven't been moved into first position, they can terminate it at any time. Not all of those backup offers have, or language have that provision in it, and that is one that you want.
And some of the other clauses restrict the seller from negotiating with the current buyer. They're not going to go for that. I mean, you're not going to get in between somebody else's transaction and say, hey, you guys can't, renegotiate or do anything. That's
Yeah.
That's just not gonna happen.
So this clause basically states that the seller can continue moving forward with the current buyer by amending closing dates, amending purchase price. They can do anything that they want with that current buyer, but if that buyer terminates, then you become the next one in line. So.
And you have the flexibility to go look at other houses.
Yep, you can write other offers.
Yep, right. You can write other offers. Just make sure that you remove this prior to somebody giving you notice that you're going in the first position.
So that's a great segue. How do you terminate a backup offer? There's actually two ways that you can do it. You can send an email. We want something in writing. Send an email to the listing agent. Follow up with a phone call. Hey, buyers found another property. They've decided that they want to terminate their current backup offer. This notice hereby rescinds the buyer's backup offer. Please confirm receipt. Just a simple email is fine. Or you can actually send over a notice to terminate.
Which I always like. That's
yeah. So on the
you know it's done.
On the notice to terminate, mark the other box. It's the bottom box. Mark the other box, and then you can type in the reasoning, and it just says backup offer terminated. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yep.
Do we need to read this buyer backup? I don't think it's that difficult to understand.
I mean, we can.
Let's read it just for fun.
Yeah.
So,
fun.
Buyer backup position. Seller is currently obligated to sell the property and their contract dated. So seller's already got another transaction. Seller's obligation to close this contract is contingent upon the buyer under the first contract acknowledging the first contract's termination in writing. So the first deal dies.
Yep.
And they put that in writing with the termination. Seller reserves the right to extend any deadlines or otherwise modify the first contract without affecting the contingency or this contract. We just stated that.
Mm-hmm.
Let them do what they need to do.
They can negotiate
to keep moving forward on their
items.
deal. Yeah. If it's going to die, it's going to die.
Yep.
Buyer has the right to terminate, as we said earlier, under this paragraph 25.1 at any time prior to receiving notice of termination of the first contract and sell. Simple.
Exactly. So seems pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and show them how to access the interactive contract in Elevate. In the event that you need to see how MEC dates work, or you want to just cut and paste that provision, you're going to log into your Elevate account and then hit the top left button, Training tab. And once this loads up, then you're going to be looking for the How-Tos, which is the bottom left side. Click on How-Tos. And then we are going to go to our buyer side How-Tos. You have to click on it in order for it to provide all the drop downs for the items that are under that subcategory. Interactive contract is the top one. So when you open that, you can scroll through and see how a contract has been templated with industry standard. Obviously, it's not all encompassing for every single transaction, but this is based upon a 30-day close. It shows you sample MEC dates, and then when you scroll all the way to section 30 additional provisions, it gives you my, I think, 9 or 10 most commonly used clauses. And that backup offer is clauses number 5. Don't forget that you have this at your fingertips. And when you download this onto your desktop, you can always click on the little yellow annotations on the left-hand side, and it will provide you with a description of each of those different paragraphs, what they mean, how they're used, how to explain them. So there we go.
Perfect.
Let us know if you have any questions. And Paul, thank you for saying be sure to download it, because the yellow box and annotations don't work.
I think they might open up in Google Chrome.
It
depends on which browser you're using, but if you're a Mac user using Safari, it doesn't. Firefox sometimes, but I think Google Chrome, it's more interactive and you can use it. But if you just download it as a PDF.
Exactly. Then you can click on it.
And then you have it on your hard drive, you got it with you, you don't have to download it any other time.
Yep. I think one question that did come up in recent weeks on the support line was in that clause it asked for a contract date for.
Oh.
Yeah. So how do you get that? That was a good question. When you're engaging in conversation with the listing agent, you say, hey, we're going to be submitting a backup offer. You say, I need the contract date for the current offer, and they'll provide that.
Yeah,
they'll just provide that to you. So whether it's November 1st, November 3rd, you'll actually put that in that clause. And that's how you do it.
It's a good question.
It is a good
It's
question.
like,
Where do I find that?
ask. But no, it's just like, is it somewhere that I should just be seeing it?
Yeah,
Nope,
is it a
you're
secret?
gonna have to ask, and
Yeah.
that's why you're having conversations, and, they know it's coming, that it's gonna be a backup offer, they probably told you, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
do
go
it.
ahead.
Yeah.
Put it back up offer.
So-
Another thing that cropped up recently that I hadn't seen was being in second backup position.
Mm.
Can you do a second backup position or a third backup position? Maybe there's a couple other buyers in front of you, and you can absolutely do that. Paul and I wordsmithed the clause so that it can be used for a second backup offer or a third backup offer. So if you need that, let us know, because we tweaked it a little bit. The way it's written by Frescom is just if you're going to be in first backup position, which normally you're not going to be a second backup offer, because the odds of having the first contract terminate, the first backup offer terminate are slim to none. But there are some instances where that might apply. So we did create some wording for that.
Perfect.
So just email us when you
Nice.
need it. All right,
All right,
moving on.
moving on.
So what if you are the listing agent and you have multiple offers on the property and your seller accepts an offer, but they just want to be cautious and put something into backup position just in case the first buyer terminates, or because they want to leverage it at inspection. But when you're on the listing side, really the purpose of having a backup offer is to leverage it
And
against the current buyer
smart buyers agents know that this is
being done.
being done. I mean, so
So let's explain that. What does that look like? Go ahead.
when you have a backup offer and your first offer is asking for certain items in an inspection resolution, and you're saying, well, I've got this guy sitting in the wings who's a little bit bigger of an offer. They're extremely motivated. They're excited. They told us they weren't going to ask for it. It's a great time to leverage
Mhm.
the guy in the back with the person that you're currently working with. And it does work.
It does work.
We have personally used that as a tactic.
Yeah.
And it's not being dishonest, or it's a hot market and you have multiple people that want to buy that home. And if you only have one, well, the seller's going to probably be a little more flexible and let's keep this thing together. But when you know you have one or two people behind you or behind the other buyer,
Mm-hmm. Waiting to move forward.
that gives the seller a lot of power to go, yeah, I understand that you thought that was an important inspection item, but I don't want to take care of it. And the guy back behind you really doesn't care. And they're more than happy to step in your shoes and move forward.
And in this market, a lot of buyers say, okay, I thought I would at least ask and see if you'll do these inspection items, but since the answer is no, I don't want to terminate, I want to move
Right.
forward.
And that's a good buyer's agent. You should always ask. There's nothing wrong with it.
Asking for inspection
Asking.
items, even in a hot market.
Yeah. But when you got a lot of people in the back, it's leverage. And as a seller and a listing agent, you got to be smart about this too, because
Yeah.
to get the next guy coming up, well, we're 30 plus days out.
Because they're starting over from inspection, appraisal, loan.
Exactly. So you got to be cautious about how cavalier you are with your transaction and what you won't do, knowing that people maybe would be willing to move forward, but you didn't accept those offers for some reason.
Yeah.
So maybe they're going to be easier to work with, but maybe they weren't quite as strong as a buyer. Maybe they didn't have the financing you were looking for. So, I mean, there was a reason you went with the first one. So it's negotiating.
Right.
You got, I see there's a negotiating class coming up at Smedra. Take the negotiating class.
Oh.
It,
Yeah, you can never
Very
have
helpful.
too many negotiating classes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they kind of gain tactics on just psychology, because really that's what negotiating has to do, is articulating something and then basic psychology of people and how they think.
yeah, it's not how do I take advantage of someone.
No,
But
no.
it is how do I best utilize the set of circumstances I'm in to better my offer, better my seller, or better my buyer.
Yeah, and the conversation doesn't look like, well, Mr. Buyer's agent, why in the world did you submit an inspection objection?
No.
My seller has 2 backup offers and he is not going to do any of that. No, it's a little softer.
Yes.
Thank you for submitting this. I'll make sure my seller reviews it. By the way, we do have 2 backup offers on this property that are extremely desirable. So if your buyer decides that, they don't want to move forward and my seller isn't agreeable to doing all of the repair items, we'll just move forward with one of them instead.
Yeah.
Much
You get that.
softer.
He's got to be very soft, very tactical,
Yes.
and
Otherwise, you can have all kinds of stuff blowing up when it doesn't need to. And, one of the other strategies before you let a buyer walk on inspection items when you have a backup is call that backup buyer agent and make sure they didn't find another house and that they are still on board. And if there are any disclosure items that came up during inspection, hey, by the way, we noticed that the sewer line needs a repair, or the HVAC system needs to be replaced, or the water heater's old. Is your buyer okay with that? Because we're in the midst of negotiating, and I don't know if our offer is going to go south or not, but we want to make sure your guys willing to move forward if for some reason this does terminate.
so do you have the right, with your seller's permission? All this is with your seller's
always the
permission.
seller
You got to
permission.
let your seller know that these are how you're going to negotiate and help them. But do you have the right to tell the people in backup, we've got an inspection objection.
Mm-hmm.
These are the items that are of concern to the new buyer. The seller's really not wanting to do these things, and ask the person in the back, how would they feel about this? And you're kind of negotiating with people who aren't in first position, not in writing, but just kind of feeling them out. Do you have the right to do that?
I think so.
I do too.
Because you're advocating for the best interest of your seller.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to be mindful of. You're advocating for the best interest of your seller.
So remember, you can be negotiating in the back, but they're still not in first position.
You're not committing to anything.
You're not committing to anything, but now you do know, you've been told, they sent you an email or whatever, it's not in writing, but they've told you, they're not concerned about those items or whatever it is. And then you go back to your first position buyer and say, these are what I'm willing to do and not willing to do. And again, you don't have to
tell me it's
tell
because
them
of the
why.
conversation you had with the backup buyer.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to know this information from the backup buyer, because if the backup buyer says, no, I want this taken care of and this taken care of and this taken care of, well, your seller is going to want to know that, because if they terminate with the first buyer and the second buyer is not willing to do anything different than that first buyer, well, you're not in a better position at all.
Yeah. So you gotta be smart on how you use a backup offer. And as a buyer's agent, you gotta be smart whether or not, do you want to be in a backup position, or are you just being used?
Yeah.
Is that the best way? So, but if your buyer's really excited and they're like, no, let's just put it in, you never know. When the market is hot as it is right now, some people are making rash decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a few more sale fails than normal. So you have a chance of moving into first position.
But sale fail rate is still only like 17%.
Yeah, it's not
It is pretty
a
low.
big percentage.
Yeah, and sometimes buyers do say, no, I don't want to be in backup position because
No.
I don't want to be used.
Yeah.
So it just all depends.
Yep, gotta play the game.
But if you are representing the seller and you tell them the pros and cons of having a backup offer, and they say, yep, we want to do it, you can call up the buyer's agent and say, please redraft a new offer with MEC dates, put in the backup offer provision, and put in the MEC dates won't calculate or start until their offer goes into first position. Or you can create a counter offer with the backup language, and you can put in there that dates and deadlines shall be modified upon the buyer going into the backup offer going into first position, and you can amend those dates if and when that offer comes to fruition. Because right now you can't even calculate what's the closing date going to be, when's the inspection date going to be. So you can do either one of those methods.
I prefer a new offer.
I prefer a new contract, yes. But I do see those counter offers come through.
And that works.
An equity agency, is it okay that we counter with the backup language? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not a problem whatsoever. So it's really easy on the seller side.
And you'd use the same backup wording that we
Yes.
just showed you.
Yep.
So it doesn't change.
It's universal.
Yeah, the same.
Exactly. All right, cool. Well, we will see you next week.
Next week,
It's sales meeting week?
sales meeting week next week.
Gosh,
Is that right,
I
Paul?
think it might be
I think
November
it is.
11th. So yeah,
Wow.
no Tuesday talk next Tuesday. Instead, join us on Wednesday for the sales and marketing meeting.
Awesome.
We'll see you guys
Otherwise, have a great one.
then. Yeah,
Have a good week. See ya.
Bye, guys.